founders are so focused on chasing the next big thing, they forget to take care of their existing clients.
Say it louder.
Client excellence, client delight has got to be the cornerstone of any successful business. It's not in their interest to come and ask you those questions.
They're not automatically thinking like, how could I deliver more to Andrea's business?
Exactly.
How can I get Pure Communications some more money?
Right.
They're thinking like, okay, here's what my problems are. They're not even necessarily thinking of you as the solve until you bring it to them and really show them what you're working on. That's exactly right.
Walking down the street, thinking about her exit, breaking down the steps so every founder gets it. She's the exit whisperer, she's opening the door. It started with a whisper, now that whisper's gonna roar. She just sold her company, and here you get the real story. Shh, you could be next. Walking down the street, thinking about her exit.
Things I have in common with this next guest on the Exit Whisperer. Our daughters both go to USC. Fight on. We both started businesses and actually agencies because we found corporate life with children to be unsustainable. We both worked with our husbands. We both sold our agencies. We both help female founders. The list goes on. I am so excited to introduce you to Andrea Johnston. Oh, we both ran power groups through Entreprenistas, one of our absolutely favorite networking groups. And we both ran power groups through Entreprenista, which is one of our absolute favorite online communities for female founders. Listen, the list goes on and on. Andrea Johnston founded Pure Communications and sold it not once, but twice in 2 private equity transactions. She breaks it down in a way that is like so understandable. She simplifies it for you in such a way that almost anyone can truly understand how this is done. She keeps it real. She keeps it raw. She keeps it honest. And I can't wait for you to take a listen. Welcome, Andrea, to the show.
Thank you.
Fellow USC mom. Fight on. So we have a lot in common, aside from being USC moms.
Yes.
We also both built agencies that we were able to scale and sell. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, high five.
Yeah,
Come on. Yeah.
It's interesting. We had very different exits because you went the eventual sort of PE, like you got involved in that world and I didn't. I sold to an individual company, a privately owned company.
Which is so cool.
It was so cool, but it was very different. I always look at your story and stories like yours and think those are so cool. So I can't wait for you to share with our audience. Tell me about the start of your agency.
Sure. Well, I had been in public relations and communications for over a decade, had been in-house in corporate America, built practices at an Interpublic Group agency and at an Omnicom agency, and ultimately was like, why am I building business for other people?
Yeah.
I should be building my own business.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate to that.
Totally.
So I literally had my daughter, was on maternity leave, and was like, I'm not going back to work for the man.
Yep.
I'm going to build my own company. So said sayonara, filed for an LLC when my daughter was 8 weeks old. Next thing you know, Pure Communications is born in the guest bedroom of our home.
It's so funny because that's another thing we have in common. Although I didn't start when Charlotte was born, I started when I was schlepping to work and like on this long commute and she was a toddler. And at first I really tried, like for a long time, I tried to fit in the box that was created for us. And like when I would schlep and be on that ride and get home like too late to give her a bath, that's when I knew it was too much. I think like every one of us seems to have that moment, whether it's kids or something else. It's like, this is not really built for us. Like it's not designed to be able to make it easy to have a family or grow or do any of it. It's tough.
I agree. And I also felt like being an executive in a corporate structure, I was the single lone female voice at the table. And I just got tired of beating my head against the wall. And I already had an 18-month-old. Then I had my daughter. And I was just like, if I'm going to work this hard, I want to do it for myself.
Exactly. And you can. And so there you go. So Pure Communication starts. One of my favorite things about agencies is we can just decide to start and there we are. That's it. You have
amazing.
a company.
Yes.
Okay. But having a company and snapping your fingers and saying, let's go. But
doesn't build a business.
It doesn't build a business. You have a business,
Yes.
right? Yes. There is a business. You may file an LLC, you may do whatever, but like the reality of actually building that business takes a lot of work. And I know that that's a passion point for you.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about how you get from A to B, B to C, and then eventually when we get towards the exit. But right now I want to hear about how you scaled.
So it's interesting because, I started my business in 2004, before the dawn of social media as we know it today. So I really leaned into my network. I had been in the industry for a long time doing communications. I was fortunate to have kept in touch with a lot of people. So I literally just reached out and said, I'm hanging out my own shingle, would love to do projects, interested in anything. And people responded. And in fact, one of my really close friends who was one of my first bosses, she had started a PR firm. So she immediately started subcontracting to me, which was phenomenal. And she was like, I never want to see you work for someone else. I want to see you be hugely successful. I mean, and how incredibly generous is that as well?
So
But I think that
generous.
just shows how people will rally around you. And another couple of friends, former colleagues, they were in everything from wireless to jewelry to life sciences.
Yep.
And next thing you know, I just was really getting busy with all these different projects. And so then I hired somebody, and then we started getting a few more projects. And then through another former colleague of mine, I got my first big ongoing contract with a biotech company. And that kind of set me off in the direction I had wanted to go in, which was back into life sciences and really focus on biotech, because I love building, and that's what biotech companies do. They're in early stage science. They're building something from the ground up. And I loved working with CEOs that were building these companies because I felt like we had so much in common. And I was passionate about helping patients with new therapies that didn't exist. So it was just so exciting. I got to meet so many interesting people, leaders from Harvard, MIT, building these companies around science that could potentially revolutionize cancer or neuroscience.
This is so interesting to me. And I feel so lucky to have you here as somebody who really gets the idea of what you need to do to scale to make a company exit ready. I guess my question on the story side is, did you set out when you first opened, like, oh, okay, I want to win a big biotech contract and that's the direction I want to go in? Or did it happen more organically? And do you recommend when founders are starting out, like, should they have a vision like that and stick to it, especially in a services business like this? Like, or is it okay to have it happen organically? What's your take on that?
I think that's a great question, because for me, I knew I wanted to do biopharma, but I also needed to make ends meet. I was the primary breadwinner in my family.
Right.
So I was willing to take on whatever projects were necessary in the near term to build a solid financial foundation, but I always knew what I wanted to build. So I believe in conceptual flexibility.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a vision, but you also need to understand what it's going to take you to get from wherever you are to the place where you want to be. And so you need to build with intention and take advantage of opportunity that's going to give you the resources, the network, the financial bandwidth to ultimately do what you want to do. And whatever you need to do in the near term doesn't necessarily mean you're sacrificing your long-term goal and vision.
When you're winning that first biotech client, do you then stop taking the jewelry clients, or are you at a point where you continue to take on a variety of different? In other words, did you say, okay, that's it. Now I'm exclusively sticking to this vertical that matters to me, that I think I can grow in? And do you recommend that founders sort of go into one direction and specialize, or are you okay with more generalists?
I mean, I think a founder has to do what's right for them and their skill set and their passion. For me, once I had that long-term contract and already had a number of projects from biotech companies, I felt secure in doubling down and saying we weren't going to take on new clients in anything other than life sciences and weren't actively pursuing anything outside of biopharma. So that became where we focused in 100%. And that was in year 2.
No, you said you answered it. You said what a founder has to do what's right for them. But I think what I want to know is, once you started serving exclusively in the life sciences space, did that help accelerate how you got new business?
100%. I mean, first of all, life sciences is a highly regulated, very specialized vertical. So not everyone can play in that vertical. Number two, I did have a very strong network. So once I could start demonstrating case studies, people who were connections of mine were more willing to take a risk because they could see that I was able to do this on my own and that I was building a team that was capable of serving those accounts. So I would absolutely say that for me, doubling down in that niche was the right decision. And it allows you to really focus your marketing and your networking efforts into a community. So you're not spread too thin. You're not trying to be all things to all people. You're really focused. And referrals are the greatest source to me of building business.
Yes.
And when you're in a niche, people talk.
I wanted to talk to you about this because there is so much focus on like, how do I scale? How do I grow? And with agencies, a lot of times it's really about doing great work, getting referrals, and getting yourself out there and just really capturing a corner in the market, which is what it sounds like you did. When you're talking to agency founders now, and you talk to them about like new business efforts and growth efforts, et cetera, how do you tackle that in a space where we know that so much of growth is around, I mean, almost every founder I talk to every time it's like, it's referrals. And honestly, it was the same for me too. We cornered a market. We had a great place, a positioning and that kind of stuff. It sounds like you did too. What do you say to them for those who are looking to grow?
Well, the first thing I say is it's so important to remember that your existing clients are your greatest source of growth and referrals.
Say it louder.
Client excellence, client delight has got to be the cornerstone of any successful business. And I feel like a lot of founders are so focused on chasing the next big thing, they forget to take care of their existing clients. They also forget the clients are really busy running their businesses. If you don't make an effort to re-engage with them and show them how your business is evolving and how new services that you offer could help their business, it's not in their interest to come and ask you those questions.
They're not automatically thinking like, how could I deliver more to Andrea's business?
Exactly.
How can I get Pure Communications some more money?
Right.
They're thinking like, okay, here's what my problems are. They're not even necessarily thinking of you as the solve until you bring it to them and really show them what you're working on. That's exactly right. I love that. So how big did Pure Communications get? Not just when you exited, but like when you started thinking about exit.
So we were actually at 10 million when my husband had quit his job about 3 years in and did all of my back office, all the finance, all the HR, et cetera. I think you can relate to that.
Another thing we have in common. We need on this episode, like a ding every time there's something that you and I have exactly in common. There were other things. And then you said your older child, when you left, when your daughter was born, you had an 18-month-old. So it's like almost exactly tied with when I left. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
So much in common.
So, I think we one day after many days of sitting around the kitchen table sort of saying, we have so much momentum. There's so much we could do to grow, but like we're this family. And already the business was consuming every conversation, every vacation, everything we did. I mean, my kids knew my clients' names as well as I did.
Of course.
And I just felt like we needed to start to create space between work and our life. And in order to do that, as well as to start to build in data and analytics, because at this point, things were really starting to move forward in the digital space. And we did not have an investment in data analytics, but I saw that that's where things were going to go.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, well, we could invest a few $1 million to put the infrastructure in and to get all of these pieces together, or we could look at a strategic partnership and allow my husband to maybe exit the business, focus more on our family, focus more on other things that really needed to be attended to. I really wanted to stay and grow. Like I saw the potential. So that's what led me to go down the route of selling to a company that was in my space. I had known Jim Weiss, the founder of W2O, for many years. He was really strong in biotech in California. I was really strong in biotech on the East Coast. So it made a ton of strategic sense. He had just done a deal with Mountain Gate Capital.
Yep.
So they were the PE backer. I absolutely love the Mountain Gate team. Like I cannot say enough good things about my experience with them, their partnership, their knowledge, everything that they did to make us stronger, better business people. So selling to Jim and being able to be in a platform with someone who really understood life sciences and really valued the same type of clients that I did was huge. And we both wanted to grow.
So your acquirer, you knew and was a competitor in the space. and they were backed by private equity. So they were like an anchor that was acquiring other businesses underneath them in order to grow and meet the qualifications needed.
They call it buy and build.
Yep.
So private equity will buy what they consider to be a platform company. That was W2O. And then they'll build by acquiring other companies to add to the platform.
Okay. So before I go on to that, I have one question on working together with your husband and that choice. I actually think it's a very valid and important reason to sell regardless of size. If you and your partner are working together and one of you is ready to do something else, or, really feels like it's impacting the family dynamic in any way. So we had in common that we worked together, approached it a little differently. Dave spun off a tech iteration to do that. But I think it's important for people to know that that's an important consideration, and personal things in your life matter just as much in a lot of ways as the money. And so money matters a lot, and where you go matters a lot, but also where you are in your life matters a lot too. And I think
that's so well said. I mean, ultimately this is your life.
Yeah.
You don't get a second opportunity at it. So you have to really think with your heart and your mind, more so than with your pocketbook.
Yep.
What's really going to be right for your family.
That's right. That's right. And that's not to say you should undervalue your business. That's not to say any of that. It's just to say that it's really important to look at the full picture. And so I really appreciated you sharing that part of the story I could picture the family vacation because I lived it.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. Okay. So you sell. And you love Mountain Gate, right? That's right.
Mountain Gate, yep.
Okay. Because
love
there's two mountains in the story, you guys. 2 mountains. Okay.
Climbing many mountains.
Okay. All right. So you're brought in kind of like you're in this roll up, right?
Yeah. So basically I get acquired. We merge Pure with a division of W2O.
Yep.
And then I take over the combined entity and they name it Pure.
Okay. Was that an important part of the exit for you, like maintaining your own growth? I know you mentioned that you wanted to stay on. Was that really important to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I love building.
Yeah.
So this was going to give me the resources, the firepower, the talent, the offices all over the world to be able to scale at a new level. It also gave me data and analytics, which I hadn't had. And it was really good data and analytics. And immediately after they acquired Pure, we acquired a data and analytics company and a digital marketing firm.
And you got to do that.
I got to be part of the M&A. It was so exciting.
That's so exciting. So, okay. Did you reach out on your own to build that acquisition when you went to W2O, or did you use a banker?
I used a banker.
Okay.
I got advice actually from one of my husband's good friends who's in PE. And he was like, you really should go through a process because you will get the best value for your business. And honestly, Carrie, I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, you had to.
So glad I did.
When you're at the size that you were at, it's just, there's too many things when you're trying to do that on your own that could be missed. You would never have any idea of what's possible. And so I'm so glad that you did too. And I'm so glad that you came into that role and that you really loved working with them and that it was a positive experience.
It was so positive. And, I can't say enough good things about when we acquired those other 2 companies, those 2 founders, 2 men, myself, the founder of W2O, one of his senior people, we were really a team. And it had been such a long time since I had been part of an executive team where we're all sharing the burden of growth and new business and talent management. And there was something really awesome about that when you're all swimming in the same direction, when you all want the same thing. And it was still small enough where I think we really felt like we had our fingers on the pulse of what was happening with the business. Mountain Gate, we had these quarterly board meetings, which was awesome because I'd never had to do board reports for my own business. Never had to present to a board of directors.
It's exciting when you've worked as hard as people like us work to create structure and infrastructure in those agencies and build a really good culture and build really good growth. How exciting that you get to report on that. How exciting that you get to share that with the board and get feedback and advice and guidance.
Exactly.
I totally get that. I didn't have that in my experience, and I could get how exciting that might be.
And for my people. I mean, I had team members who were in the North Carolina office and they went and worked in the New York office.
It's great.
I had people who were like, hey, I want to move to Austin, Texas. We had an office there now.
Yep.
I had people who wanted to go and do a preceptorship in the London office. Like, it opened up so much opportunity for them. I had people who went into data and analytics who had traditionally been PR people. I just felt like I could offer so much more than I could as a mom and pop bootstrapped company. As successful as we were, there was always that element of it was me and my husband and we were doing the best we could. So I feel like it just allowed us to have a next level experience, great benefits. To this day, they have a sabbatical program.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just things that as a smaller business, it's very hard to do. But when you're part of something bigger, it just opens up new doors.
Now, when you are part of this group and there's a PE investment, it's understood that in the next several years, usually, unless it's a long hold, you're going to sell again. And that did happen.
Correct.
With you. Okay. And now we go to another mountain.
Yeah. So basically, we achieved our 5-year goal in 3 years.
Great.
It blew everybody away.
Amazing.
But I think it speaks to how aligned we all were in our goals and our willingness to really go for it and work together as a team to achieve it. So we then were back out on the road. And ironically, the team that I'd worked with on the banking side was one half of the team that took us back out on the road. We actually had 2 banking teams.
That's
yep,
great.
They knew us. They knew the business. They really understood the sector. And then, we had a ton of interest. There just weren't a lot of independent firms at the size and scale we were at the time. So I think we were on the road for about 8 months when it was all said and done. You kind of keep narrowing the field. And then we ended up selling to New Mountain, which is a very large PE firm, really brilliant people at New Mountain. And they had done some incredible transactions prior to investing in us in healthcare. So we knew they had a lot of interest and excitement about the space. And, it was just like riding this incredible high, and it was so exciting. At the same time, both of my kids at that point were in high school and were facing a lot of the challenges that come with high school.
By the way, harder.
So much harder.
It's harder. Nobody tells you this.
Nobody
harder
tells you
than
that.
The baby years.
Yeah. I mean, they're faced with making decisions that are preparing them for adulthood, right?
Yep.
And they need you to lean in a way that you didn't need to in middle school.
Yep.
And I was on the road more than I had ever been. At that point, we got an apartment in New York City, so I could be up there more for a combination of the business and the PE side. And we were doing a lot of M&A. We went on to, I think, acquire something like 12 companies over the next year. I mean, it was exciting and crazy. And I had some other things happen in my personal life and my professional life. I lost a good friend and former colleague of mine very suddenly. And it just really kind of like made me take a step back and reassess. And I just realized like I couldn't keep up that pace.
Yep.
And I just felt like my heart was no longer in it. Like I had already achieved everything I had ever thought possible.
Right.
So I think some people would look and say, I don't understand. Andrea was at the pinnacle of her career. Why the heck would she want to like step away from that? But I went to Jim and Jen and I was basically like, hey, I really need to step down. And I love Jim. He was like, well, don't you think you could just take a sabbatical?
Yeah.
Like take 6 weeks and, give yourself a break. And it's like, I don't think 6 weeks is going to cover it. Like I need to do some work on myself. I had gained 50 pounds in like 2 years.
Yep.
I just didn't feel well. And I didn't feel like my family life that I valued so highly was where I wanted it to be. So I left.
Well, I think that one thing that's really important is that you had the freedom and ability to do that from the first time you sold. And we don't always need to work until we get the absolute highest potential extraction of wealth that we could ever have. Like you have to balance the humanity of who you are with the opportunity that's in front of you. And like, to me, it sounds like that was a no-brainer for you. Like even just watching you, like I just see it, that it was like, that was the time for you to make that choice.
It really was. And, it was crazy because I had that conversation with them like late November and they asked if I would stay on until March. And I said, absolutely. Like I wanted to do right by my team and by them and by our investors. My last day was March 2nd, 2020. I left the next day for college tours. And then we had to cut those tours short because of COVID.
Same.
No idea that I would then be able to be so present. I was not in Zoom life, like so many of my former colleagues, I was able to really focus on my kids, getting them through COVID, helping them navigate. My son was dealing with preparing to apply to college.
Yeah.
And it was just like no one knew what was going on. It was crazy.
No one knew. And I also think another commonality, my daughter, I sold when my oldest was going to college because it is a life change that is very, very difficult to reconcile. Like, you've raised this human and it's 18 years and then they're out, and like you're getting them out and you're launching them, but they're leaving. And like, it's a huge shift for moms and dads. And I think it a lot of times I see this with businesses that people are just like, okay, I need a change, or now I need, to do that. So that makes complete sense to me. How do you, after that, find your next path, and how quickly does it come to you?
It's interesting because I really did take almost 2 full years completely off. I did a lot of volunteering in my community. I got on the board of my kids' school, was very active during COVID in the school because they were navigating like how to handle it, what to do. I had an amazing opportunity to work with a nonprofit to create a social impact investment fund and workforce development because, like many Southern towns, we saw huge displacement during COVID. All these people flocked to the South for the better weather, to be outside, to have a different life. They didn't have to be in these offices anymore. Well, the cost of living goes up, and people who have lived there forever and don't have high paying jobs were all of a sudden being pushed out of the market. So it gave me a chance to get really engaged with my community in a meaningful way. And I learned so much, and I met some extraordinary women who were leading these programs and initiatives. So we now launched it called the Forward Fund, and being a part of architecting that was just so gratifying and exciting.
Wonderful.
And I think it was through that and through having time to really reflect where I realized I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. I wanted to do something with women, and I was seeing all these women do incredible things, but they didn't have access to capital. They didn't have a network to support what they were doing. They weren't really sure how to go from point A to point B. I had also 2 friends of mine who started to look at selling their businesses. They sought out counsel and advice from me. And it was very gratifying to see that a lot of what I said actually was right and influenced what they ended up doing. So I said, there's got to be a way to put all this together. I love building, but I'm ready to help other people build. And I really want women to be successful and feel like they can tap the expertise they need and not be intimidated by all the masculinity. And I think while many of the men who were involved in my different transactions were brilliant and awesome, it's intimidating when you're like,
sure, you want to
the only woman
to be able to ask these types of questions. And it's so interesting because I consider us colleagues in a space that is so underrepresented. We need more of us in this world, and what you're doing, which I hope you'll talk about here, with Fuel for Female Founders. It's so needed. And the best way that we can help women achieve more and build like on their own terms is through relevant experience shares like the ones that we've had. And so to me, it's so fantastic. And I feel so lucky to have you in this space with me, building and helping other women really focus on what they need to do to grow and exit and all of it. And so.
Well, and I want to say, like, I was so joyful when I saw you publish about the exit gap.
Yep.
And wanting to close that gap and what you're doing, because we need that so badly.
We do.
And
we do. But we can't get there. We can't get there alone. Like,
no.
And that's the thing.
And we can't get there overnight.
You can't get there overnight. You can't get there alone. You can't possibly have enough resources doing it. And so I'm so happy to celebrate Fuel, which is launched in 2025. This may come out
earlier this year.
Okay, earlier this year. And by the time this comes out, it might be 2026. Yes. But recently launched. Tell us a little bit about it.
So it's really meant to be kind of a platform where we have advisory work and counsel, helping entrepreneurs, usually in like the 250, 500,000 in revenue up to about 10 million.
Yep.
Look at growth and scaling, love strategic planning, love to look at tools for forecasting and profitability and things like that, where a lot of women, they're awesome practitioners.
Yeah. They don't want to think about that.
They don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
And I get that. So I love helping with that process. And then we also have a whole aspect to the business that is for executives who are looking to command the room, is what we call it, where they want to get more control over their narrative. They want to show up as their full authentic self, and they need help in how to own that power and how to convince stakeholders, in particular in the finance community, that what they're selling is worth buying.
So whether they're fundraising or going through a process of exit, they need to know how to speak about themselves, how to speak about anything that, you know, their company does and why it's so valuable.
Yes. And one of the things I always hear from bankers is one of the rate limiting factors is failure of succession planning. That entrepreneurs show up and it's them, and like there's not a really clear set of number twos.
Right.
And one of the things I think is important is to take your employees on the journey with you. And so how do you convey that? How do you rally people around this vision that you have for what's next? That is so different. And that is something I learned that I could have done differently in my process.
Gosh, I love this. So, beyond the founder.
Yes,
it's about getting the executives at that level to be able to speak, because you're right. And founders, by the way, a lot of times we're obsessed with ourselves in our own way. We don't mean to be.
No.
But like you're on this mission, you're taking all the risk.
Exactly.
It's like, yes, of course it's me and only I can present this. But like it's essential. You're absolutely right, because it's such a value increaser too. It's like when you have the exec team, they don't want to acquire a business where they know that the founder will eventually leave and not have something that's sustainable beyond that. That's exactly. I love that.
So that part of it. And then we have this whole program called Women I Want You to Know, which is really my passion project, which is recognizing women from all different walks of life, whether you're an executive in banking or in finance, whether you're the founder of an exciting company that's meeting an important gap in the marketplace, or you're a nonprofit leader who's making communities better. Or maybe you run a political PAC and right now you're fighting for the rights of people who can't fight for themselves. Yep. We want to share those stories, celebrate these women, and connect them to each other, because we all need each other. We need to help and we need to support in so many different ways. So we do that on LinkedIn. We are launching a podcast for Women I Want You to Know in January. And then we also have a dinner series. They're very intimate, curated dinners, 10 to 12 women, all at the same peer level. And the goal is really to foster connection and support, because coming out of COVID, I saw that there was just a lot of transactional nature to relationships again. And amongst women, I feel like when we come together, the power is palpable. But you need to be in the same room, and there's the trust factor that you can't replicate digitally fully. So it's just my little small way of trying to convene women and encourage that connection.
I absolutely love that. Looking back on your journey, and specifically as you exited, went to the two mountains, you climbed both mountains. There you go. Is there anything you would have done differently?
I think that I would have done a couple of things differently. One is how I brought employees along the journey and the evolution of my vision.
Yeah.
I definitely would have done that differently, and I would have been more communicative. I think like a lot of people, when you start going through a process, you kind of hunker down because you're dealing with so many different things. But that's like the most important time to be seen and be visible with your people.
I know.
I think the second thing is the most valuable thing I think I've learned in my career is that I can't control other people. I can only control my reaction.
Yeah.
And that self-discipline was definitely hard learned for me.
Yeah.
But really getting into a practice like meditation or something that would allow me at these earlier points in my career to have centered and to have realized I don't need to react to that.
That's right.
Like I just need to do my thing, and this too shall pass.
That's right.
But, you know, when you're younger, you don't always know those things.
You learn as you go.
Exactly.
And if we didn't have anything we would do differently, then what's the whole point? You know, like you have to really be able to talk about that stuff. Well, Andrea, I'm so happy that you were on the show with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I feel so lucky to have you in my orbit. I feel so grateful. And I just hope, really, truly hope that people check out what you're doing, because it's great. And I want to come to one of those dinners. I'm coming.
I want you to come.
I'm coming.
We want you as one of our women I want you to know.
We
want to celebrate you.
Of course, anytime.
We really want to tell your story as well.
Anytime.